It is Wednesday, January 9th, 2019. It is 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and so you know what time it is. It's time for a little bit of coin metal. And it was very fun. Get your ass kicked at Jiu-Jitsu Wednesday. We did a little bit of stuff from the north-south position. Not exactly my favorite setup, but I did really enjoy the format, and I do think the information that we were covering is terribly important for me, honestly, because I found a lot of glitches in my game with regard to being in a subordinate position on the bottom, either in north-south or in like side control, and so I really got to work on that. But I did kind of get around some issue, but I found a major glitch. I got to do some more reverse shrimping. I'm like terrible at reverse shrimps, and a lot of the techniques that we were covering today, specifically, it helps to have a really good reverse shrimp there. Be able to pull yourself kind of back out of the position using your ankles. And like I said, I had a lot more ease holding people in north-south than I did getting out of north-south. Although I did end up in a really interesting position where my opponent, while I was trying to get out of it, managed to put me up in this position where, like, I had all of my weight on my forearm and slightly twisted. I had no choice but to go, hey, you're gonna break my fucking arm there, dude. But anyway, yeah, it was interesting. I definitely need to be working that position a bit more. I didn't have as much trouble, like I said, in maintaining the north-south position, but going anywhere from there without letting my opponent out was really difficult. I did manage to get into a good position when I had top control of it with my second opponent. And I wanted to kind of get a little bit more into what I really liked about the class format that we did today. Like I really like the class format where we start with one position and we go from like that position to a counter for that position to a counter for the counter of that position, so on and so forth, and getting it like 5 steps from one position all the way until another position. And we've done that a couple times in my school with different materials. And but this one in particular, this class, the way we did it was we learned the position, we drilled the position, and then we sparred the position. And I really like that because it gives you an opportunity to instantly apply it. The only issue that I really had with it is I feel like I probably would have gotten as much, if not more, if we were adding to the time that we simply drilled the position. Like maybe pause, revisit the visuals of it, and then try and go back to it again, like two drilling sessions, so like you get your initial view, right? You spar, or not you spar, you drill rather. Then you review the position, and if the instructor like noticed anything goofy or whatever that was like predominant amongst everybody, or just dominant in the room, revisit it again and emphasize on that spot, and then go again from there with a drill, as opposed to sparring it right off the bat. As far as the sparring goes, if this were me, just ideally, I feel like getting more of the drilling in itself. I mean, sure, you're only going to drill like 2, maybe 3 moves in any one class, but nonetheless, you get the reps in, And plus, I think the review would kind of help reflect back. I know the classes don't last too forever, so it's like I'm sure the instructor's just like trying to cram as much into that period that they have available, and sometimes not even getting to all of it, But in any case, I really liked the format because, like I said, it gave me an opportunity to work the position. And the thing I really enjoyed about today is that I was sparring with people that were my belt or higher, and I didn't feel as out of water as, like a fish out of water, as much as I had imagined I might. But yeah, like I said, I felt better testing myself today, instead of just rolling with the white belts or something like that. And I've been doing that because, I'm a little older, so these sessions put a little wear on me. And so in an effort to try and take it easy on myself, I sometimes do roll with the lesser advantaged people, not to make myself feel glorious or anything like that, but just so they're not hurting me. I feel like I'm pretty safe around them, but like I said, I felt a lot safer than I had imagined I would have. That's one of the bigger challenges in jiu-jitsu for me, is just pushing that limitation of expectation. It's like you've got a barrier in your mind saying, oh, I can do that, oh no, I'm not so sure I can do that, and that doesn't feel very comfortable at all, and I don't think I can do that one either. Those are barriers that you got to push through. And for me, it's been one of the reasons I even came to jiu-jitsu, was to challenge those I'm not sure, I don't think, and push the fuck through them. Grab it and throw it in a fucking Kimura. That's what I want to do with it. That's why I'm there. Because I think that those tendencies that we see in the jiu-jitsu gym, they aren't endemic just to the gym itself. They're expressions of how you deal with life in general. And so, like I said, when I'm there, I'm there to push that I don't know, I'm not sure further away from me. I want to know. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw down into some music. As far as what we're going to go with, I'm not entirely sure right off the bat. I do have something kind of planned. I got a few tabs planned. So material-wise, I think we'll be just fine tonight. So let's go for a little bit of Anthrax. You Gotta Believe. First Dance here on Coin Metal. And that was White Zombie with Real Solution, number 9. And so let's see here. As I was saying, I do have a shit ton of tabs, but you know what? The Twitter feed, it just never fails. It's like I'll have something all squared away. I think I got it all figured out. But no, I come back from during the music break there, and I start going through the Twitter feed again, and it completely fucking derails what I was talking about or thinking about actually covering. That's why I didn't actually mention the subject matters, because I'm always afraid that's going to happen. And so anyway, I just wanted to hit this brief one, because the thing that we're going to be addressing tonight mainly is about 18 pages long. It's going to consume a shit ton of the show. So anyway, let's get on with this thing. This is on ethnews.com, and this is very important because I've been saying that the SEC really doesn't have any business regulating ICOs. They said something about it, and so they think they're self-important enough that they can dictate to the rest of the world how they're going to treat ICOs. And they're wrong, mostly because they don't actually administer the products. But secondarily, and I think even more importantly, unlike all other derivative products on planet Earth, you can verify the reserves that your tokens represent. And you can actually directly exchange and receive delivery of the Ethereum underlying. Anyway, continuing on. And that's not exactly the case with all tokens. Don't take me on that. But you can take them to a lot of exchanges and exchange them for Ethereum there. It works. Anyway, this is on ETH News. Federal court denies SEC's motion for preliminary injunction in Blockvest matter. And this is by Nicholas Ruggieri. So yes, penis. This is authored November 29th, 2018, a little while ago. But we're going to go with it anyway because I don't hear enough discussion about this on my Twitter feed, so it kind of leads me to believe that a lot of people just aren't paying attention to it. They assume that the SEC has made some words on it, and their words are final, and so, yeah, anyway, continuing on. On October 5th, U.S. District Judge Gonzalo Curiel of Southern District of California granted the Securities and Exchange Commission's ex parte application to, among other things, halt a planned ICO by blockchain-based crypto exchange Blockvest LLC and freeze the assets of Blockvest and its founder, Reginald B. Ringgold III. But on November 27th, the judge denied the plaintiff's motion for a preliminary injunction, ruling that the SEC failed to demonstrate that the BLV tokens sold by Blockvest and Ringgold in pre-ICO sales failed to meet the definition of a security under U.S. law. Failed to demonstrate that they... well, you know, it's because I don't know, I would assume the judge is not really educated there. That's kind of worded weird. Ruled that the SEC had failed to demonstrate that the BLV tokens sold by Blockvest and Ringgold and pre-ICO failed to meet the definition of a secure. That's weird. Anyway, continuing on. In October, ETH News reported on the emergency court order obtained by the SEC, which halted Blockvest's planned ICO. The SEC's complaint filed in connection with its application for that order alleged the ICO's backers falsely claimed that the ICO had been approved by the SEC. The complaint also alleged Ringgold promoted the ICO with fake agency he created called the Blockchain Exchange Commission, using a graphic similar to the SEC's seal and the same address as the SEC's headquarters. The Blockchain Exchange Commission does technically exist, at least as a website, though it is not affiliated with the SEC or any governmental regulatory agency. According to Tuesday's ruling, during the hearing on the SEC's motion for a preliminary injunction, Ringgold asserted that BLV tokens, which a few investors had purchased during the pre-sale, were, quote, only designed for testing the platform, and the testers would not and could not keep or remove BLV tokens from the Blockvest exchange. Furthermore, Ringgold stated that the 32 investors in the Blockvest exchange had put in a total of less than $10,000 of Bitcoin and Ether, and that the investors were friends and family members of Ringgold and Blockvest's chief financial officer, Michael Shepard, who had at times loaned them money personally, which they themselves invested. The order states, quote, most of the individuals confirmed that they did not buy BLV tokens or rely on any of the representations the SEC has alleged were false. The SEC also alleged Blockvest claimed to have raised $2.5 million from investors, although Ringgold clarified that the $2.5 million had not been from the public, but instead was based on a transaction with investor David Drake. The transaction, however, eventually collapsed, and they admit the social media posts were overly optimistic. Note, Drake is chair of LDJ Capital, one of the 5 groups listed as founding members of the Blockchain Exchange Commission, along with Master Investment Group, the Soho Loft Media Group, Blockchain Investment Group, and Rose Gold Investments. The last of which lists Ringgold as founder. Ultimately, Judge Curiel denied the preliminary injunction. He found the SEC had failed to sufficiently allege its claims for securities law violations because it was unable to demonstrate that the BLV tokens met the requirements of the Howey test, which courts use to determine whether transactions involve securities. Howey's three-part test requires, quote, 1, an investment of money, number 2, in a common enterprise, number 3, with an expectation of profits produced by the effects of others. Judge Curiel stated that, based on the available facts, he could not determine whether there had been an investment of money or an expectation of profits. As such, the SEC did not demonstrate that the BLV tokens purchased by the investors helping to test the platform were, quote, securities under securities laws. For his part, Ringgold recognized that mistakes were made during the testing process, but said that no omissions were made in connection with the sale. Currently, he has stopped his efforts to proceed with the ICO and agreed not to proceed until he gives the SEC's counsel 30 days notice. Number one, it sounds like they developed some sort of plausible explanation for what they were doing, but it seems to me what this really was a bunch of fraudulent claims and some investment by his family and friends. And they structured it to look like what they structured it to look like. And the $10,000, I would assume that probably a great deal of it was actually spent on the website and so on and so forth. That was kind of a nothing article, but it does show us that the bounds of the SEC are limited. And see, I think that if somebody were to do a serious ICO and they were to be challenged by the SEC by being drawn into court, I would suggest going through with it. If you are an actual, like legitimate project, you have legitimate investors, all of your books are completely transparent, you haven't been pissing the money away on fucking hookers, coke, and boats, and you're above the board on all of your investment. If you can demonstrate these things, you have, even as an ICO, a project that is beyond the scope of the SEC's actual enforcement capabilities. The reason why we have an SEC is because you cannot verify, physically or otherwise, the volume of gold or other commodity that the token in exchange is representing. You don't. And there's actually need for clarification as to exactly what the certificate being sold represents. Because there's been a great deal of fraudulency and all that stuff. Now, you can see that in your Twitter feed. I mean, if you were around for the ICO boom, if you were around for Alt Bloom 1, you saw it. You saw the fraudulent claims of astronomical wealth and so on and so forth, and you just kept going. You didn't even bother to click on it. At least most of you didn't. Some of you did. But the fact of the matter is that what we could grade as a fraudulent activity or whatnot, it's relatively easy in cryptocurrencies because much of what's involved is completely transparent and public. And because it is operating in the public sphere as it does, accountability is much easier to define. Exactly who was responsible, exactly what their intent was. We can discern these things from their actions. Now, where Homeboy could have been fucking up is if his project was publicly known, in which case every single scratch that the SEC came across as fraudulent claims, such as where they located their headquarters, the name of the blockchain commission or whatever, the symbol representations that are very, very close to the SEC's, these can all be discerned as attempts to defraud people. Okay, and this again is one of the biggest problems I have with any association of quote-unquote trust or authority in cryptocurrencies, because it bestows upon the projects that aren't being attacked or whatever some semblance of legitimacy. And see, if you start mistaking that signal for being a legitimate thing, as opposed to your own smell test, your own sensibilities, your own risk aversion, that kind of thing, that's where you get into fucking trouble. That's where you get wrecked. You start trusting some monkey you met on Twitter or Facebook or somewhere else over your own sensibilities. When something doesn't make sense, ask fucking questions. If you do not ask questions, you can't hold anybody to blame when you suffer the fallout. You know, I see all kinds of fraudulent claims being made about quote-unquote wallets, Lightning Network wallets, right now. And there's this big run-up to get involved in this thing. Oh yeah, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. They've reinvented fucking bank accounts. It's an entirely custodial model. And I will say this. The way I see it is, they plan to onboard people with completely custodial wallets that will not touch the blockchain themselves, ever. They'll be connected via fucking payment channels with like Visa or MasterCard or fucking Goldman Sachs or Wells Fargo or US Bank. But they won't actually be Bitcoin. You won't actually be transacting Bitcoin around. You'll be transacting some sort of IOU token that's backed by some representation of Bitcoin buried 3 fucking layers deep under all that bullshit. And it's kind of obvious to me because the abuses have already started. In any position where there's a custodian, they need to get paid. They need to comply with regulatory restrictions on their projects. You know, they need to employ certain people that they didn't need to employ before, because now they're in charge of your fucking money. And a lot of these projects, I can almost guarantee, are in blatant violation of FinCEN's definition of a money transmitter and or a custodian, and they are not licensed in all of the districts of all of the customers that they intend to serve. So, I can expect the ban hammer to be flying from FinCEN, the OCC, NYDFS, any number of organizations that are pretty much composed of bankers, and will throw the fucking ban hammer at you for doing the job that they do in the way that they do. And make no mistake, if your custodial model is in any way similar to a bank account that you hold in some conventional bank, you're in some deep shit, dude. You may not know it yet, but you are. You know, they waited at least 20 months before they started any enforcement actions here in the United States. So just imagine how that's going to go for the Lightning Network, where everybody's going to get all comfy, and the fees going to be low, and everything's going to be wonderful, and then it's slowly going to creep up, if not completely fucking one day the next transaction you do costs you $2 in miner fees or transaction fees, as they've gone so far to push the semantic and mimetic on that. You know, they don't talk about miner fees. They don't talk about miner donations anymore. Why? It's because when you say the words transaction fee, you don't think about miners. You think of a transaction fee. I got to pay somebody to facilitate this transaction. Only in Lightning, you're not paying the miners, the people that are actually doing the work. You're paying some sort of intermediary that's making a promise to you that, oh, we got your funds, man, don't worry. Everything's cool. You're gonna be able to enjoy these really, really low transaction fees in perpetuity, man. No problem. And you know Bitcoin's gonna go through a nice little spike, and you're gonna celebrate because all of a sudden your money that's being held by this third party is somehow increasing in value, in relative value to what it was before, and suddenly you feel rich. Only if you ever try to take actual possession of your Bitcoin, you're going to find that the transaction fee to exit the payment channel is more than you actually have in the payment channel. That's right, folks. That's how they're intending to lock you into this bullshit. Anyway, continuing on, and this is a greater danger, and I believe it will be experienced probably before the little scenario that I just laid out for you, that, you know, one of these channels is going to have a few $1 million worth of Bitcoin locked up in it, and suddenly it's going to be worth it to try and compromise that shit, because you're not going to be able to transact on the Bitcoin blockchain. So that shifts the motivations. It shifts the incentive, because now the incentive is to cheat, because cheating has become much easier and much more profitable than simply playing the game by mining. Continuing on. And so here it is. I got this thing. It's eprint.iacr.org 2019/023.pdf. Biased Nonce Sense, Lattice attacks against weak ECDSA signatures in cryptocurrencies. This is by Joachim Breitner and Nadia Henninger. My apologies, ma'am. Abstract. In this paper, we compute hundreds of Bitcoin private keys and dozens of Ethereum, Ripple, SSH, and HTTPS private keys by carrying out cryptoanalytic attacks against digital signatures contained in public blockchains and internet-wide scans. The ECDSA signature algorithm requires the generation of a per-message secret nonce. This nonce must be generated perfectly, uniformly, or else an attacker can exploit the nonce biases to compute the long-term signing key. We use Lattice-based algorithm for solving the hidden number problem to efficiently compute private ECDSA keys that were used with biased signature nonces due to multiple apparent implementation vulnerabilities. Keywords: hidden number problems, ECDSA, lattices, Bitcoin, and crypto. Number 1. Introduction. The security of the ECDSA signature algorithm relies crucially on the proper generation of a per-signature nonce value that is used as an ephemeral private key. It is well known that if an ECDSA private key is ever used to sign two messages with the same signature nonce, the long-term private key is trivial to compute. Repeated nonce values are not the only type of bias that can render an ECDSA key insecure, however. In fact, any non-uniformity in the USDA signature nonces can reveal the private key, given sufficiently many signatures. In this paper, we carry out lattice-based cryptoanalytic attacks against ECDSA signatures collected from the Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Ripple blockchains, as well as internet-wide scans of HTTPS and SSH hosts and efficiently compute hundreds of Bitcoin private keys and a handful of Ethereum and SSH private keys. As a side effect, we also find numerous Bitcoin, Ethereum, Ripple, SSH, and HTTPS private keys that were compromised through repeated signature nonces. The lattice attacks we apply are based on algorithms for solving the hidden number problem. While the hidden number problem is a proper tool in the cryptoanalytic literature for recovering private keys based on side channel attacks, to our knowledge, we are the first to apply these techniques to already generated keys in the wild, and the first to observe that these techniques may apply to signatures in cryptocurrencies. In total, we computed around 300 Bitcoin keys with these techniques. As of this writing, 818,975 Satoshis, or around $54 and $30.40 XRP, or about $14, remain in Bitcoin and Ripple accounts whose keys we were able to compute, suggesting that these flaws do not yet appear to be known, or else these funds would have already been stolen. Or at least they didn't bother to hit those because they were teeny tiny and they already got the big ones. Continuing on. The attacks we use are significantly faster than naive brute force or the state-of-the-art algorithms for the elliptical curve discrete log problem. Using square root time algorithm like Pollard RHO, who could feasibly carry out a targeted attack against a small number of the 64-bit or 128-bit nonces we discovered, carrying out this attack against all of the approximately 2 to the 30 power signatures in the Bitcoin blockchain would have required significantly more computational resources than we have access to. In contrast, we spent around 40 CPU years total on our computations implemented in Python for all of the blockchains. The nonce vulnerabilities fall into several classes that suggest that we have found several independent implementation vulnerabilities. We first used the hidden number problem algorithm to discover the long-term ECDSA signature key when used with nonces that are shorter than expected, and found keys used with nonces with lengths of 64 bits, 110 bits, 128 bits, and 160 bits. We extend this technique to discover nonces with several prefixes and suffixes, and found keys used with signature nonces that shared prefixes and varied in their 64 least significant bits, as well as keys used with signature nonces that shared suffixes and varied in their 128 and 224 most significant bits. Ethics. We were unable to validate the existence of these vulnerabilities without actually computing the private keys for vulnerable addresses. In the case of cryptocurrencies, these keys give us, or any other attacker, the ability to claim the funds in the associated accounts. In the case of SSH or HTTPS, these keys would give us, or any other attacker, the ability to impersonate the end hosts. We did not do so, and in the course of our research, we did not carry out any cryptocurrency transactions or active attacks ourselves. Our research is entirely passive and requires only observations of transactions or general-purpose network measurements. However, given that we find evidence that other attackers are already emptying the accounts of cryptocurrency users whose keys are revealed through known vulnerabilities, both repeated nonces and private keys posted online, we anticipate that users will be affected once knowledge of this flaw becomes public. We have attempted to disclose flaws to the small number of parties we were able to identify, but in most cases we were unable to identify any of the particular vendors, maintainers, or users to responsibly disclose to. Countermeasures. All of the attacks we discuss in this paper can be prevented by using deterministic ECDSA nonce generation, which is already implemented in the default Bitcoin and Ethereum libraries. Number 2. Related work. The hidden number problem and ECDSA, the hidden number problem and the lattice-based algorithm we use to solve it were formulated by Bonnet and Venkatasan, who used it to prove the hardness of computing most significant bits for Diffie-Hellman, Halgrave and Graham, and Smart, and Eugen and Sparlinski 26 applied the hidden number problem to show that the DSA and ECDSA signature schemes are insecure if an attacker can learn some most significant bits of the signature nonces. Since then, this technique has been applied in practice in the context of side-channel attacks. Repeated DSA/ECDSA signature nonces. A number of works have examined the vulnerabilities in DSA and ECDSA due to repeated signature nonces in the wild. Henninger, Durumeric, Woostrow, and Halderman compromised SSH host keys for 1% of SSH hosts in 2012 by searching for repeated DSA signature nonces from SSH handshakes. They traced the problems primarily back to implementation vulnerabilities in random number generation on low-resource devices. Boz, Halderman, Henninger, Moore, Nering, and Woostrow documented repeated nonces in the Bitcoin blockchain in 2013 as part of a broader study of elliptic curve cryptography use. Valsorda studied repeated Bitcoin nonces in 2014. Courtois, Emerdag, and Valsorda studied repeated Bitcoin nonces in 2014 and noticed that it would be possible to chain compromise across keys. Gasalucci and Valsorda studied repeated nonces and variants of weak keys and nonces repeated across keys in Bitcoin in 2016. Brangle and Rousseau examined repeated nonces within signatures from the same key and claimed and chained compromised nonces across signatures from different keys in the Bitcoin blockchain in 2018. Key generation issues in cryptocurrencies. In 2013, a major bug in Android's Secure Random was blamed for the theft of Bitcoin from many users of Android wallets due to the faulty random number generators generated repeated ECDSA signature nonces. In 2015, the blockchain.info Android application was discovered to be generating duplicate private keys because the application was seeding from random.org, which had started serving a 403 redirect to their HTTPS URL several months prior. Oh shit. Cryptocurrency, cryptanalytics. There's no O in there, I guess. The Large Bitcoin Collider is a project that is searching for Bitcoin private keys using an apparently linear brute force search algorithm that has searched up to a 54-bit key space. For public keys that are already revealed, it would be more efficient to use square root discrete log algorithms to recover short private keys of this type. But we are unaware of any dedicated efforts in this direction. Number 3. Elliptic Curve Digital Signature Algorithm, ECDSA. The public domain parameters for an elliptic curve digital signature include an elliptic curve E over a finite field and a base point G of order n on E. The private signing key is an integer of D modulo n, and the public signature verification key is a point Q equals DG. Elliptic curve public keys can be represented in uncompressed form by providing both the x and y coordinates of the public point Q, or in compressed form by providing the x coordinate only and a single parity bit from the y value. To sign a message hash H, the signer chooses a per message random integer k modulo n, computes the point kg, and then computes the values x to the r and y to the r equals kg modulo n, and outputs r equals x to the r and s equals k minus 1, or k to the minus 1 times h plus dr modulo n. The signature is pair rs. To verify a message hash using a public key q, the verifier computes x to the 1 r. Jesus Christ, a whole bunch of math. Bit length of curve is shorter than blah blah blah. ECDSA and cryptocurrencies. This is really where I'm trying to get to. Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Ripple all use elliptic curve SECP256K1. A Bitcoin address is derived from a public key by repeatedly hashing the uncompressed or compressed ECDSA public key with SHA-256 and RIPE-MD 160. An Ethereum address is the last 20 bytes of the KICAC256 hash of the uncompressed ECDSA public key, where KICAC256 is an early version of the SHA-3 standard. Ethereum public keys are not explicitly included along with the signature. Instead, the signature includes an additional byte V that allows the public key to be derived from the signature. A Ripple address is derived from a compressed public key by repeatedly hashing with SHA-256 and RIPE-MD 160 and concatenating portions of the hashes. For the purposes of the analysis in our paper, in all of these cryptocurrencies, the ECDSA public key is only revealed after an address has been used to sign a transaction. Bitcoin and Ripple explicitly revealed the ECDSA public key in uncompressed or compressed format along with a signature in Ethereum. Clients must derive the public key from the signature itself using key recovery. ECDSA signatures are used to authenticate the sending party of a transaction. Addresses can be a single signature corresponding to a single public key, or multi-signature addresses which require valid signatures from K out of a set of N public keys in order to spend money from a transaction. Users are typically recommended to use a fresh new address for every transaction. Signature normalization. ECDSA signatures have the property that both the signatures RS and R-S will validate with the same public key. In October 2015, Bitcoin introduced a change in the signing procedure to use the smaller of S and -S mod N in a signature in order to make signatures unique. Ethereum and Ripple also do this type of signature normalization, which affects our attack. ECDSA in network protocols. ECDSA signatures can also be used in other network protocols. In TLS, every certificate is signed either by a certificate authority or is self-signed. Most of these signatures remain RSA signatures in practice. However, when ephemeral Diffie-Hellman key exchange is chosen as part of the cipher suite in TLS 1.2 and below, the server signs its portion of the key exchange, and the client uses the public key in the certificate to validate this signature. In SSH, every host has a host key that it uses to sign the entire handshake between client and server. The client authenticates the server by verifying the signature with the host public key. 3.3. Elementary attacks on ECDSA. If an attacker learns the per message nonce K used to generate an ECDSA signature, the long-term secret key D is easy to compute as D equals SK minus H R to minus 1 mod N. It is also well known that if the same nonce k is used to sign two different messages, H1 and H2, with the same exact secret key, then the secret key is revealed. Let R1 and S1 be signature generated on hash H1 and R2, S2 be the signature on hash H2. We have immediately that R1 equals R2, since R1 equals R2 equals X times KG, then we can compute K, H1 minus H2 times S1 minus S2 to the negative 1 mod n, and recover the secret key as above. Number 4. Lattice attacks on ECDSA. The signature nonce k must also be generated perfectly uniformly at random modulo n, or else techniques for solving the hidden number problem can be used to solve for the secret key D. 4.1. The hidden number problem. In the hidden number problem, as formulated by Bonnet and Vakatasan, there is a secret integer modulo, or something weird symbol, modulo, I don't read math very well, a public prime p, and one is given information about the most significant bits of multiples t1 weird thing mod p, where the ti are generated at random and known to the attacker. In other words, one is given m pairs of integers, and I'm really terrible at reading math. There are two techniques to solve this problem in the literature. The first uses lattice-based techniques to solve this system in the case of larger biases and fewer samples, up to around 100 in practice, with B several bits smaller than P. And the second uses Fourier analysis and is more suitable with many samples, at least 2 to the 32nd power, and a very small bias. In this paper, we focus on the former technique, which is better suited to the limited number of signatures we encounter in the wild. To solve the hidden number problem using lattices, we consider the lattice generated by the rows of matrix M. In equation 2, and there's a diagram here demonstrating equation 2. The M times M upper left quadrant is a slightly rescaled version of the lattice given Bonnet and Vakatasan, who suggested using a CVP algorithm to find a vector that is close to the target, which is the m plus 1st row in our lattice basis. The most efficient implementations of lattice algorithms are SVP approximation algorithms, so we follow in embedding this lattice basis into a slightly larger one and using an SVP approximation algorithm instead. This is a bit more technical than I had anticipated. And we're not going to read some of that stuff because, again, I don't like trying to read math and like fumble through it, because I'm sure there's somebody on the other end just like ripping out their hair going, my God, it's this fucking... So, you know, I'm trying to avoid that. Anyway, 4.2, optimizations. There are further optimizations that should be applied to this attack. The first is that in the case of the most significant bits known, the value bi is always positive, or b to the square root of I. Yeah, there we go. It's always positive, and thus one can increase the bias by re-entering b to the square root of I by writing each equation as x to the square root of I, or square root of I minus t to the square root of I times y plus a to the square root of m plus b equals 0 mod p, which has a solution, and we're not going to read that. The second improvement is to decrease the dimension of the lattice by 1 by eliminating the variable y from equations 1, so that 1 has m minus 1 equations in m unknowns, all bounded. And a whole bunch of weird stuff. math, satisfying a hidden number problem algorithm to solve, blah, 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 breaking ECDSA. I'm trying to get down to just like the conceptual idea here without all the math in it, because, I mean, they go on and on and on into the whole math of it. And if you're math heavy, I would suggest reading this simply to get a better understanding of the parts that I'm skipping. Continuing on. Unfortunately for the attacker applying these attacks to cryptocurrency signatures, the signature normalization described in 3.1 adds complexity. We expect half of the signatures to contain a negated S value, but we will not be able to tell which. From equation 3, negating S will negate the derived value of k to the square root of I. Thus, an attack on small k to the square root of I would still be expected to succeed, since the Lattice algorithm can recover both small positive or small negative values. But the normalizations required to solve for the case of shared prefixes in section 4.3 or shared suffixes in section 4.4 would produce outputs that do not have the desired properties. For these cases, we brute force signs for the s to the square root of I. The signature normalization also means that relations defining ECDSA private key recovery from known or repeated nonces as described in 3.3 may not hold as described. For these cases, we also brute force sign values for S. Bitcoin. Collecting data. To collect Bitcoin signatures, we modified the official client to output hash values and signatures as they are verified and revalidated the entire blockchain. We used a snapshot of the blockchain from September 13th, 2018, block height 541,244. At this point, the blockchain contained 975,576,082 signatures from 446,605,479 distinct keys. 40,497,752 of these keys had been used to generate more than one signature. 569,396,463, or 58% of the signatures in our snapshot had been generated by one of these keys. 5.2 Crypto analytic. It's probably like fucking Coinbase's address or something like that. Crypto analytic tests for biased nonces. We clustered signatures by public key and eliminated signatures that were fully identical, that is, that share both the hash H and the signature RS. For keys associated with M greater than 1 distinct signatures, we ran the following randomized test on subsamples of the signatures. Number 1. Check if the set of distinct signatures generated by this key contains any duplicate R values. If so, we compute the private key and all signature nonces K using section 3.3 and do not run any of the following. Section 2. Number 2. Select two signatures at random and check for nonces of length less than 128 bits. We repeated this test 2 times M times for each key. That might be 2 million times for each key. Number 3. Select 3 signatures at random and check for nonces of length less than 170 bits. We repeated this test 2 million times for each key. Number 4. Select 3 signatures at random and check for nonces sharing 128 most significant bits, brute forcing signature normalizations. We repeated this test 2 million times for each key. Number 5. Select 3 signatures at random and check for nonces sharing 128 least significant bits, brute forcing signature normalizations. We repeated this test 2 million times for each key. Number 6, for m equals greater than or equal to 40, check for nonces of length less than 256 times m minus 1 divided by m minus 1 bits using all m signatures without signature normalization. And number 7, for m greater than 40, choose a random subset of 41 signatures and check for nonces of length less than 248 bits. We repeated this test m divided by 20 times, or 1 million, I guess m divided by 20 million times for each key without signature normalization. And where I've been saying million, that's actually m. My apologies if that's some sort of confusion. I know that can be with mathematics. Continuing on. The parameters were chosen so that these tests would complete in a reasonable length of time, even for the most common keys. 5.3. Running the cryptanalysis, or cryptanalysis. We implemented these tests in Sage using built-in BKZ implementation for lattice basis reduction. We ran the computation parallelized across 2,000 cores of heterogeneous cluster with mostly Intel Xeon E5 processors. We ended up running the computation twice, once without signature normalization on a snapshot of the blockchain from March 2018, and once with normalization on September 2018. For the low-dimensional lattice attacks, the bottleneck of the computation was the elliptic curve multiplications required to check whether we had found the correct private key. The total running time for both jobs was 38 CPU years, and the longest running job corresponding to a single key that had generated 1,021,572 signatures in March 2018, completed in 30 calendar days. 5.4. Results and analysis. Biased nonces. And this is really where we were wanting to get to. After running our attacks, we had computed the private keys for 302 distinct keys that were compromised via small nonces, nonces with shared prefixes, or nonces with shared suffixes. These keys generated 6,026 signatures with these vulnerable nonces in the blockchain and 7,328 signatures overall, including signatures that we did not classify using vulnerable nonces. For further analysis, we used the BlockSci library. We classified keys by the signature nonce vulnerability that had compromised them and summarized the data in Table 1. Nearly all of the compromised keys had been used as part of multi-signature addresses of type 1 out of 1, 1 out of 2, 1 out of 3, 2 out of 2, 2 out of 3, 2 out of 5, or 3 out of 5. On September 23, 2018, a total of 745,990 satoshis were in non-multi-signature addresses whose keys were compromised by these biased nonces. An additional 72,985 satoshis were in multi-signature addresses where we possessed all of the necessary keys for the account. A further 6,480,000 satoshis were present in the addresses for which we possessed 1 out of 2 necessary signatures. We plot the signatures from biased nonces over time in Figure 1. Nearly all of the compromised nonces fell into a few clear cases or classes based on the length of the variable portion of the nonce. We found short nonces of length 160 bits, 128 bits, 110 bits, 64 bits, and a few sporadic nonces below 32 bits. We also found nonces that shared a fixed prefix followed by a variable 64-bit suffix, and nonces that varied in the 128 most significant bits and shared a fixed 128-bit suffix. Most of the affected keys were part of multi-signature addresses. Oh gosh, that seems like post-SegWit. Table 1. Bias signatures and keys. We classified the compromised keys and signatures by the type of nonce vulnerability that had compromised the private key. Nearly all of the compromised keys had been used as part of multi-signature addresses. In other words, addresses starting with the number 3. Figure 1. Bitcoin signatures with small and biased nonces over time. We plot signatures with biased nonces over time, grouped by the class of bias we observed, and whether they are used with multi-signature addresses, marked with a star. Larger circles corresponded with more signatures on a given date. We note that different types of biases appear at different date ranges, suggesting that these vulnerabilities are specific to distinct implementations. Yeah, it looks like the majority of them are 128 plus suffix and with the times signature star, and then 128 plus suffix are the. And also there's a big preponderance of them between 2014 and 2015 on the 64-bit nonce type. Continuing on. Oh, let's see here. Kind of went down a little bit too far there. 64-bit nonces. We found 5,863 signatures from 280 distinct keys that used 64-bit nonces. All but one of these keys was used as part of multi-signature addresses. All of these signatures appeared between July 26, 2014 and June 1st, 2015. Two accounts related to these keys have a non-zero balance. One 2 out of 2 address, for which we have one private key, has a single Satoshi. It's probably a test transaction. 2 out of 3 address, for which we have 2 private keys, has a balance of 72,985 Satoshis. Since nearly all of these keys are part of multi-signature addresses, we hypothesize that this may be a faulty implementation intended for multi-factor security, such as a hardware token. So, probably a hardware wallet implementation. 64-bit nonces and single signature keys. Our Lattice attack only applies when at least 2 signatures with a small nonce are created using the same secret key. A single 64-bit nonce requires only 2 to the 32nd power time to break using Shank's baby step giant step algorithm or the polar RHO algorithm, feasible with only modest computation resources. Applying this attack to all of the 2 to the 30 power Bitcoin signatures was beyond our resources, but we investigated a random sample. The bottleneck is the random accesses into the pre-computed lookup tables, so we chose the parameters so that they fit into the RAM of our largest memory machine, 2.2 terabytes. A single core can check a single signature in not equal to 7 minutes. So the code can be found at blah blah blah, and they actually give you a GitHub repository for it. We spent 15 calendar days of computation time, or 17,000 core hours, to check a random sample of 144,000 Bitcoin signatures, and found one nonce that had already been computed via the Lattice attacks and no previous unknown small nonces. We concluded that the Lattice attack appears to have found most of the vulnerable signatures. 110 minus what's the dash? 128 and 160-bit nonces. We found a few sporadic signatures that used larger nonce lengths that were broken by our lattice techniques. These may be individual programming errors, but do not appear to be part of common implementations. They were probably spaced funds. None of the affected accounts had a non-zero balance. Number 1, 3 160-bit nonces, all of which were used with the same key, all on the same date in September 2017. This key did not produce any more signatures in our data. We hypothesized that a 160-bit nonce length might be explained by a user generating a nonce using a hash function with 160-bit output as indeterministic ECDSA, but were unable to verify this. Number 2, 4 128-bit nonces from 2 keys. Each key generated 2 signatures with 128-bit nonces on the same 2 days in March 2016, and no further signatures. Number 3, 1 signed 110-bit nonce used with 1 key in January 2017, which had also generated a normal-looking 256-bit nonce on the same day. 256-bit nonces with shared 128-bit suffixes. 121 signatures were compromised by nonces that shared a 128-bit suffix with at least one other signature. 55 of these signatures were used with multi-signature addresses, and 66 were generated by non-multi-signature addresses. 13 keys were compromised this way, which had generated a total of 224 signatures. There were 20 distinct suffixes that had been used by these keys. The earliest signature of this type that we found was from March 2015, and the most recent was from August 2018. Some of the keys that were used with nonces that all shared the same suffix with some were used with nonces of varying and occasionally unique suffixes. We found that a number of the addresses associated with these compromised signatures had been posted on the web along with their private keys for a variety of reasons. They corresponded to small integer private keys derived from easy-to-guess passwords such as Satoshi, or private keys such as examples in documentation. All of the affected accounts had a zero balance. Interestingly, in 54 of the signatures, the 128-bit nonce suffix is identical to the 128 most significant bits of the private key. The vulnerable transactions emptied the relevant accounts. We hypothesized that the vulnerable nonce suffixes we observed may actually be due to a custom implementation used by an attacker who is emptying accounts from Bitcoin addresses that were already compromised online. The overlapping bits between the nonce and the private key might be an artifact from a bug in a program written in a memory-unsafe language like C. 256-bit nonces with shared 192-bit prefixes. We computed 2 keys that had been used with 27 signatures with nonces sharing prefixes. Each key had some signatures with the shared prefix and some without. One of the 2 keys has a balance of 495,990 satoshis and seems to be in current use at the time of writing. Shit, that's somebody's live wallet. Repeated nonces. As a side effect of our analysis, we also calculated 1,296 private keys from repeated signature nonces. These keys had generated 4,295,141 signatures. Nearly all of the repeated nonces in 2,456,870 signatures used OX7FFFFFFFF is one particular one. Okay, yeah, got it. Figure 2. Bitcoin signatures with repeated nonces over time. We plot repeated signature nonces over time, separating the value n-1 divided by 2, which seems to have been used intentionally, from other repeated nonces. Larger circles correspond with more signatures on a given date. Signatures involving multi-signature addresses are marked with a time or other repeat. I was just looking at their scale here. The vertical bars mark when the development left and release right versions of the official Bitcoin client began to create nonces deterministically. Interesting. And there was 2 of them. There was one between 2014 and 2015, and then one from 2015 to 2016. I would wager that the one slightly after 2014 was the BIP9 when that implementation went in, and then the next one, that's about right for BIP 148 or UASF. I'm not entirely sure on that one, but it looks like it looks really close. Anyway, continuing on. Let's see. Figure 2. Larger circles correspond to more signatures on a given date. Signatures involving multi-signature addresses are marked with a star. The vertical bars mark when the development left and release right versions of the official Bitcoin client began to create nonces deterministically. Yeah, I would be willing to bet both of those bars correspond to implementations of SegWit. Continuing on. As noted by diagram 8, this is n-1 divided by 2, where n is the order of the SECP256K1 curve. The x-coordinate of G, n-1 divided by 2, is 166 bits long, where one would expect a random point to have 256 bits. It appears not to be known why SECP256K1 has this property. Gregory Maxwell notes that SECP224K1 shares the same 166-bit string doubled to produce the generator, and speculates that this value is the output of SHA-1. According to diagram 1, reference 1, this value is used to sweep, quote, dust transactions. We note that even for a final transaction for a given key, an attacker could observe a proposed transaction, derive the secret key, and erase the original transaction. This is not a concern if the key has already been compromised, however. Some of the transactions using k equals n-1 divided by 2 are withdrawing money from addresses derived from easily guessable brain wallet passwords. There were no funds left in any of the addresses with repeated nonces at the time we examined the results. Since this failure mode of ECDSA is well known, it appears that multiple entities regularly scan the blockchain for repeated nonces and remove any funds from vulnerable keys. However, there were 2 multi-signature addresses with non-zero account balances for which repeated nonces revealed one of the necessary addresses. The website www.darkwallet.is asks for donations to be sent to a 3 out of 5 multi-signature address, which currently holds a balance of 1,722,498,619 satoshis, approximately $110,000. One of these 5 keys was compromised by a repeated signature nonce. We contacted Amir Taki, one of the founders, who told us the signatures from these addresses had been calculated manually, suggesting that the random number generator may not have been seeded. One 2 out of 3 address had a balance of 179,400 satoshis. In Figure 2, we plot non-unique signature nonces over time. Clusters of repeated nonces in 2013 appear to correspond to one of the reported RNG vulnerabilities random number generator vulnerabilities discussed in Section 2. The rate of repeats decreases after 2014. Other small nonces. We brute forced all 32-bit nonce values and found 275 signatures from 52 keys. The small number and observed nonces 1, 2, 9, 100, 1337, 13,337, 133,337, and I'm not going to go on, do not point to a flawed implementation, but rather handcrafted transactions and signatures. Yeah, they were spelling leet. Fucking morons. Number 6, Ethereum. Collecting data. We collected Ethereum signatures by querying a local Ethereum node via its RPC interface. We ran our analysis on a snapshot of the blockchain from September 17, 2018, block 6,346,730, an estimated 311,118,952 signatures from 34,754,686 distinct public keys, 19,558,608 57% keys that had generated more than one signature, resulting in 922,874 95% signatures from such keys. Running the cryptanalysis. We clustered signatures from by public key and examined the keys that generated more than one signature. We ran the same test for Bitcoin as well we ran the same test as for Bitcoin, and as with Bitcoin, we ran the computation twice, once with signature normalization on our September 2018 blockchain snapshot, and once without on a snapshot from July 2018. The total computation took 9.5 CPU years, and the longest running job corresponding to a single key that had generated 1,321,734 signatures in July 2018, completed in 25 calendar days. Results and analysis. 256-bit nonce with 192-bit prefix. One key was compromised via biased nonces. It had generated 7 signatures in our dataset, of which 5 nonces shared the same non-zero, random-looking 192-bit prefix and differed only in the last 64 bits of the nonce. The remaining 2 signatures that had been generated by this key look random and do not share this prefix. The key holds 0.0002 Ether. Repeated nonces. 3 keys were compromised from repeated nonces with 185 signatures between them. The repeated nonces included 4 occurrences of the nonce 1, 2 occurrences of a seemingly random 256-bit nonce, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, A, B, C, D, E, F. No funds are held by these keys. God damn, I should certainly hope not. Let's get down here. 7. Ripple. Collecting data. We downloaded a portion of the Ripple blockchain that included 218,101,343 signatures. There were 482 unique public keys, of which 379,575 had generated more than one signature, totaling 217,909,436 signatures, 99%, that were generated by a key that had been used more than once. Running the cryptanalysis. We clustered signatures by public key and examined the keys that had generated more than one signature. We ran the same tests as for Bitcoin. The total computation time took 1.1 CPU years, and the longest single computation took 5 calendar days for a single key that had generated 361,366 signatures. Results and analysis. We found that one private key that had been compromised by repeated signature nonce. This key had generated 21 signatures. It holds 30.40 XRP, approximately $14 USD, and 1.81 CNY, or Chinese yen. We deduce that attackers have not yet begun to systematically observe the Ripple blockchain for repeated nonces. 8. SSH. Collecting data. We gathered DSA and ECDSA signatures from internet-wide scans of SSH on port 22 that were performed by Census between April 3, 2018 and September 18, 2018. The scans contained between 7.9 million and 9.4 million DSA and ECDSA signatures each, for a total of 196,884,009 signatures from 20,103,764 distinct public keys. These included 191,855,472 NIST P256 signatures, 2,634,869 DSA signatures, 2,095,181 NIST P521 signatures, 16,919 NIST P384 signatures, and 133,568 ED25519 signatures. Running the cryptanalysis. The SSH dataset included a wide variety of different DSA groups. We ran the tests described in section 5.3, scaled to the relevant group size. The total computation time was 2.8 CPU years, and the longest computation took 8 days to process the most common key, which had been used for 1,450,916 signatures from our scans. The results and analysis. 256-bit keys with 32-bit shared suffixes. 3 private keys produced signatures whose nonces all shared the suffix F27871C C6. The hosts have gone offline since, and we were unable to identify the implementation. This suffix is one of the constant words used in the calculation of a SHA-2 hash with the swapped byte order. We can speculate that the server is using SHA-2 to generate the nonce, but has a bug in the implementation. 224-bit keys with 160-bit nonces. One further key was compromised due to the use of small nonces. All 23 signatures used by this key used a 160-bit nonce with a 2048-bit DSA public key with a 224-bit subgroup and were observed at the same IP address. We speculate that this may be due to the use of a 160-bit hash function like SHA-1 or MD5, being used to generate the nonce in a 224-bit group. Repeated nonces. 681 signatures were compromised by repeated nonces. Of those, 612 used DSA and 69 used ECDSA with NIST P256. These came from 34 distinct public keys on 80 distinct IP addresses. We compared this number to repeated nonces found in a March 25, 2012 scan of SSH that requested only DSA host keys provided by the authors of 18. In 2012 scan, 22,182 nonces had been used more than once, and 58 distinct keys were vulnerable on 24,893 distinct IP addresses. We include that many of these vulnerable implementations have been taken offline or patched since then. HTTPS, or this is number 9 rather. Collecting data. We gathered ECDSA signatures from weekly internet-wide scans of HTTPS on port 443 performed by Census between April 3, 2018 and September 6, 2018. The number of ECDSA signatures per scan increased from 1.5 million to 1.9 million, resulting in 50,313,795 total ECDSA signatures from 182,843 distinct keys on 3,333,482 distinct IP addresses. 50,096,848 signatures were from NIST P256 and 212,523 were from NIST P384 and 4,400 were from NIST P521 and 24 were from NIST P224. Running the cryptanalysis, that word keeps fucking me up. We ran the same sequence of tests as described in section 5.2, scaling the number of bits to the curve order. The total computation time was 152 CPU days, and the longest computation took 17 days to process a single key that had produced 4,093,917 signatures from our scan. Results and analysis. We did not find any small or biased signature nonces. We found 3 different sources of signatures with repeated nonces, which we hypothesize are due to flawed random number generators. These resulted in 462 vulnerable signatures that had been generated by 7 distinct private keys on 97 distinct IP addresses. Interesting. Acknowledgements. We'd like to thank Luke Valenta and Zakir Durumeric for help in updating zgrab and Census to collect HTTPS and SSH signature hashes, and Tanja Lang for the reference on the surprisingly small binary representation of k equals 1 divided by 2 in SECP 256K1. Much of the work for this paper was done while the authors were at the University of Pennsylvania. This work was supported by the National Science Foundation under grants CNS-165-1344 and CNS-151-3671. We are grateful to Cisco for donating much of the computing cluster used to carry out our computations. Good stuff. Yeah, so it appears, at least in my book, that there seems to be some increased validity to the possibility of a flaw in SegWit that would allow your wallet to be compromised. And this is why I've always stressed that if you are to use a Bitcoin wallet, make sure it starts with the number 1. I'm not saying that's a guarantee, but a Bitcoin legacy address, by this paper at least, is more secure than a multi-sig address. So there you have it. And I don't know if that's due to various vendors having flawed implementations in their SegWit wallets, or some flaw within SegWit itself. I really couldn't tell you. But nonetheless, I think that you ought to stick with legacy addresses. And as far as like multi-sig and Lightning Network and all that other business, as far as I'm concerned, the shit is still experimental. And actually, from what I saw the last time I checked, it seems like SegWit addresses are actually in decline, meaning less people are using them. And I'm sure there's going to be some sort of spike because we've got people signing on to custodial wallets that by default use SegWit or Betch32. So, I think it's either disingenuous, intentional, or just simply reckless to be using these newer hashing protocols, or these newer protocols with regard to addressing your Bitcoin wallet. I think that there's still a significant chance that they represent a security issue. No guarantees there, no, and I'm not a developer or anything like that. I'm just noticing a preponderance of occurrence and speculation indicating that there might be something very flawed with regard to segregated witness. And I just go by the way it was pushed. It was pushed hastily, and any kind of backlash or anybody indicating that we had to stop and take and test this stuff, or better yet, put it in a fucking altcoin first and see how it works before we go throwing it into Bitcoin. And all of that discussion was squelched from the top down, and that indicated to me that whoever it was that was pushing SegWit did not want people asking questions about it. And that indicates to me that they don't want speculation about it or investigation either. And so, again, watch out for your own bunghole. Do not trust quote-unquote experts, not even me. Don't take my word for shit. It's the points where you start trusting people where you get fucked over. Now, I do concede there is a modicum of trust that you are investing in cryptocurrencies, but do not trust more than you can verify. If you can't verify whether or not there's a security flaw in it, well, you probably shouldn't be using it. But if you can find reference materials where the thing has been challenged and not defeated, or the instance of it can be mitigated by various preparatory things that you can do on your end, then you got to be studying this shit. You can't just accept what people say. And so when you start hearing people ranting off dogmatically about something and telling you not to ask questions, they're probably trying to sell you right up a river. Sell you into a little trap that they've invented just for a sucker just like you. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw back down into some music. And I'm feeling the need for some Power Man right now. Bombshell. Here on Coin Metal. And that was Sepultura with Arise. And although I was tempted to let the music run until the end, I couldn't do that to you. That's like another 20 minutes. Can't close that. Gotta leave that open. Let's see. Might go there. Trying to figure out which one of these I really want to cover, and I think it's this one because it's It's something central to the theme that I talk about a lot on this show, about how cryptocurrencies are basically the mutually assured destruction arena of the 21st century. Excuse me. Anyway, this is on the dailyhodl.com. Russia will buy $10 billion in Bitcoin, ditch US dollar, and become huge crypto whale, Russian economist. And this is authored on January 8th, 2019. No indication of the original author, but we will continue here. Let's see. According to a new claim from a Russian economist, the world's 12th largest economy is about to pour $10 billion into Bitcoin. Vladislav Ginko, a lecturer at Moscow's Russian Presidential Academy of National Economy and Public Administration, says U.S. sanctions are forcing Russia to diversify. Chris, I believe, sitting here in Moscow, Russia, that the real factor of Bitcoin adoption will be when Russian government I'm working for will start investing almost $470 billion worth of reserves into Bitcoin. I expect that it'll be at least $10 billion in the first quarter of this year. That's pretty big. Ginko told the Australian crypto outlet Mickey that at this point he believes Russia has no other option. Quote, U.S. sanctions may be mitigated only through Bitcoin use. Because of U.S. sanctions, Russia's elite is forced to dump U.S. assets and U.S. dollars and invest hugely into Bitcoin. The Central Bank of Russia sits on $466 billion of reserves and has to diversify in case there is limited opportunities to do it. A new report from Forbes highlights the impact U.S. sanctions are having on Russia. Quote, sanctions and isolation are having an impact on the Russian economy. Although Russia is not a big exporter to the U.S., canceled energy and defense contracts in Europe, coupled with bans on financing Russia's key lenders, have had an impact on the economy. What else can explain the lackluster growth story in the country since 2014? Even higher oil prices have done little to lift the Russian economy. In July, the state-sponsored Russian news outlet RT said President Vladimir Putin gave a speech highlighting the need for alternative reserve currencies in global trade. Quote, regarding our American partners placing limitations, including those on dollar transactions, I believe is a big strategic mistake. By doing so, they are undermining the trust in the dollar as a reserve currency. Damn Skippy. They already did that a long time ago. At that time, Putin said Russia has no plans to stop using the US dollar unless it's prevented from doing so. In Venezuela, President Nicolas Maduro announced that the country's newly created digital asset, the Petro, is an official government currency. The Petro is supposedly backed by the country's oil reserves. After its launch, U.S. President Donald Trump prohibited Americans from investing in it, claiming it was designed to avoid U.S. sanctions. Yeah, big whoop-de-doo. Alright. Let's see what the comments are like here. Ty Nugent, just a rumor, but buy the rumor and sell the news, remember? That's an interesting take on it. David Tomlinson. Rumors like this are started by those who pump and dump. In fact, it's almost laughable. Quite frankly, every single cryptocurrency will drop to zero and take with them the morons that actually believe that the powers that be would allow a non-regulated currency to take hold. What a joke. Yeah, David, you are the joke. The joke is on you. Never mind. Let's see here. I'll believe it when it happens. Until then, it's fake news. I believe you are correct and non-wibble. Until it actually happens, we just don't know. But yeah, whether or not this kind of manifestation will actually occur, whether this will manifest in reality, we don't know. And quite honestly, I think there's a pretty good chance it's just kind of reverse FUD. But at the same time, you do have to regard the possibility that such sanctions and other economic barriers that the U.S. has put on Russia and other countries might be circumvented by cryptocurrencies, or at least that those countries or entities might be tempted to use them to circumvent any kind of U.S. blockade, financial or otherwise. In all honesty, I think that cryptocurrencies supply the world, not just nations, but individuals, with the ability to circumvent all embargoes, all sanctions. But only, of course, if you use them without a third-party intermediary. And, as we are going to cover in the next article, that's already been noted by a few people here. This is on BitcoinNews.com. Immutability questioned after Steemit blog bans 9/11 blackmailer's account. And this is authored on January 10th, 2019. So apparently, whoever wrote this is from the future. Steemit bans 9/11 whistleblower account. On December 21st, 2018, a hacker group known as the Dark Overlords threatened to dump classified insurance files that are allegedly related to the 9/11 attacks on the World Trade Center buildings. The hackers told the public that the files were taken from major global insurers like Lloyd's of London and Hiscox Group. The Dark Overlords announcement also included a demand for $2 million in bitcoins for a 10 gigabyte archive of files, according to the Pastebin Post, which has since been scrubbed from the internet. According to the publication Motherboard and a spokesperson for the law firm Hiscox Group, the files were stolen and likely did pertain to the 9/11 attacks. Since the group distributed this information across the web and made international headlines, the Dark Overlord's social media accounts were targeted, and the hacker group was deplatformed from sites like Reddit and Twitter. After the wide range of censorship on January 2nd, the Dark Overlord explained in another Pastebin announcement that they would be dumping the data on the Steem blockchain. However, it seems publishing classified 9/11 data is not looked upon favorably by those who run Steemit. On January 7th, 2019, the Steemit GitHub repository shows the developer known as J. Redbeard appended the account The Dark Overlord to the protocol's GDPR user list.js section. Essentially, this means the account was banned from using the website for violating Steemit's terms of service agreement. The action has also infuriated some members of the Steemit community, as posts about the subject can be seen on the project's Reddit page rSteemit. Steemit has censored the account of the Dark Overlords. What was the point, Steemit? Yeah. Uncensorable blockchain platforms exist. Interestingly enough, some Steemit proponents defended the action and explained how the Dark Overlord account was only banned from the official Steemit website, noting that the group's posts could still be seen on alternative sites like busy.org. Moreover, other cryptocurrency community members discussed other blockchain services that would help the Dark Overlord dump the data in a truly immutable fashion. The hacker group could hypothetically utilize platforms like Monero.cash and BitcoinFiles.com to communicate to the public and dump classified files without the risk of takedown. For instance, Memo acts like Twitter, but every action is recorded into the Bitcoin Cash blockchain. The posts cannot be taken down after they are etched into the BCH chain, and one individual even started recording. My apologies there. every verse in the King James Bible into the blockchain. Another example of a tool that could help whistleblowers is the Bitcoin Files protocol developed by BCH programmers James Kramer, Attila Eros, and Haptic Pilot. My apologies. Bitcoin Files is a file sharing platform that allows anyone to upload any type of media file to both the Internet Planetary File System protocol and the Bitcoin Cash blockchain. Once the files are recorded into the chain, they can be shared widely and found easily using a blockchain explorer or queried on the BitDB network. There is no developer or arbitrary individual who can delete the files once they are appended to the network, and IPFS files tied to the Bitcoin Cash chain can be shared with anyone in the world using a simple URI. URI. Over the last year, deplatforming and censorship have continued to increase, but cryptocurrency and blockchain advocates believe it should not happen on their turf. It is obvious that centralized entities on the web will persist and suppress dissident voices and whistleblowers. As a result, blockchain applications that fight against this behavior will be welcomed with open arms by those who cherish the ability to speak freely. Yes, and I do believe that those options which are most feasible and do allow it easiest and with the least amounts of friction from anybody will be the most successful. And this again is a place where cryptocurrencies are allowing people all over the world to circumvent the holds that their governments may place on internet entities. And it is with that I'd like to close out this episode. Thank you very, very much for listening. I certainly do appreciate the support. We will be back again on Friday at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And so until then, I want y'all to trade safe. Do your homework. Watch out for your own bunghole, because nobody else is going to do it for you. Thank you again for listening. And as far as our last dance is concerned, I haven't actually picked out anything. So I'm going to have to be hasty about it. We haven't played any Meshuggah tonight. And that's kind of interesting. But you know what? We also haven't played any Body Count. That's a tough conundrum. Why not? We've been talking about people ganking other people's funds. So here it goes. Meshuggah, Vanished. Last Dance here on Coin Metal. Thank you again for listening, and you all have an excellent evening.